Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rock Squad podcast, the latest in everything rock music news, reviews, and discussion. I'm one of your hosts, Mr. Nick Chino, joined by my bandmate and co-host, Mr. Dave Marini. How's it going, Dave?
Hey, everybody. How you doing, Nick? Hey, remember, before we get started, head down there, like this video, share this video, subscribe to our channel so you're up to date on everything that happens. Make sure you click the little bell so that you don't get lost and forget about us. We got a lot to talk about this week. It's been crazy. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, just hanging out. You know, it's Tuesday, so just kind of getting into the work week, and I'm already exhausted, but I'm excited to podcast.
Oh yeah, me too, man. I've been waiting all day. I made a sandwich earlier, and I was like, I got to get my energy. I got to get my protein.
Yeah, for sure. You got to get your sandwich energy for the show. And you know, when we were off air before we started recording, we were talking about COVID-19 and how this madness is still continuing and everything sucks, especially in Ontario, Canada, where we live. This is kind of off the top. We're not, we have some more topics to talk about on the show today. But what are they saying that now in Ontario, venues and artists are no longer allowed to live stream concerts? So I think I read something about that.
Yeah, one of the new lockdown. It's not new, actually. Every time we go into like the high level of lockdown, where you can still go to Costco with 5,000 people.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just this new. I'm not sure why they're doing it, but like they're shutting down the possibility of a venue holding a live streaming event. Mm-hmm. So if a band of 4 people wanted to socially distance with a camera and broadcast it to help save the venue or to help make money for themselves as musicians, they're not able to do it. It's legit against the law. So I'm not sure. It seems like an emergency measure that doesn't really do any good, and I don't know why anyone would enforce such a bizarre, like, small-timey thing. Like, but, we're in weird times right now.
Yeah, and I was reading that a lot of the venues are frustrated because they're trying to do anything they can to stay afloat, to keep music alive, live music going in the pandemic. And here in Ontario, things they've always been frustrating, to say the least, when it comes to how this thing's been handled in our province here in Canada. But I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. Obviously, this isn't it, because this is one of the ways that these venues can stay alive and keep live music going. So I'm not too sure what they can do. It's very frustrating. We've talked about as a band that we want to do some sort of live stream as well, but we can't because there's so many restrictions where we live. So it's been so difficult to even just make music right now.
Yeah, I feel really bad. Like, I know, like, we know personally a lot of like club owners and bookers that are putting out extra money, like money they don't have already, to get new gear to be able to accommodate these types of events. And when, every 4 months, the carpet gets pulled back and you're already, it doesn't seem right. I don't think it's like, it seems like kids are in school, but we can't socially distance a couple adults in a room with a musical act to try to save a couple businesses. I don't see any logic in it at all. And I'm all about taking care of everybody and making sure everybody's safe, but I don't really think this is the same thing. This is like on another level of doesn't make sense,
Yeah, the policies have been inconsistent.
Very, to say the least.
Yeah, so that's what's going on in our neck of the woods in terms of rock music, live music, anything like that. It's frustrating, because we were talking off air that, we've been making music ourselves, and it's been so difficult to get in a room to do it together and, record or jam. And I miss jamming so much. Obviously, you can do it at home, you can play solo, but it's nothing like getting together with the guys and, making music.
Oh, buddy, I'm jonesing so hard. I can't even tell you. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Any musician out there that collaborates with people on a regular basis and has these restrictions and imposed on them, it's so frustrating. Like, it's such a release for all of us, and we love doing it so much. And it's like, I can't even remember. When was the last time we played a show? I don't even remember. Like, live.
It was 2019 when we played What the Fest in Brantford in July of 2019. That was the
Like
last time we played a show.
that's crazy. And we had
Yeah.
stuff booked for all of last summer, and we're just we were making all the right moves
Yeah.
until there were no moves to be made. So
Yeah.
it's super frustrating on that part,
Yeah. Well, the
But
good thing is that in general, us aside, that a lot of musicians and bands and artists have still been releasing music. I'd say the pandemic has been good for creativity in general.
for sure.
We've been writing a lot on our own, but we're talking about big bands, big artists. They've still been putting out music and still been making it happen. So that's, I think, a little bit of a silver lining for the pandemic.
Yeah, there's lots of
Creativity's
content. Lots
high.
of people are doing stuff. So yeah, like there's tons of it coming out. So that's
Yeah.
good. Good for the fan. Like we're happy as fans.
Yeah, if they didn't, we would have nothing to talk about on this show.
Be rough, bro. It'd be rough.
Be rough. But thankfully, there are a bunch of things that we're going to talk about on the show today. So let's give you a rundown of the structure of the show. A little bit later on, we'll be giving you our tracks of the week. We've been listening to some stuff that we want you to know about, a couple of recommendations of some awesome rock songs that you should listen to. So that's coming up. And then we'll get to this week's headliner topic, which is the big topic we're talking about this week, which is something that I've wanted to talk about extensively since we started this podcast. It's only episode 3, but this is something that I've really wanted to dive into, and that is the age-old question: is rock dead? We'll get into that, Dave. I have some thoughts. I'm sure you do as well. But first, let's get into our opening act topics. We have 3 topics that are hitting the headlines this week in rock music news, and the first one is about Mr. Dave Grohl of the Foo Fighters, who just recently released their new album Medicine at Midnight, which is already one of my favorite records of 2021. And he's got a new book coming out. It's called The Storyteller. He's taking all these stories that he has from being a rock star over the years in bands like Scream and Nirvana, Foo Fighters, then Crooked Vultures. He's putting it out in a book. He's putting it all together, and it's kind of a riff or spinoff of his Instagram account, which was called Dave's True Stories. And the announcement was made with an audio clip of Dave telling one of his famous stories. It's going to be released on October the 5th. And I'm super into this idea. I'm definitely going to read the book. I'm excited to read a lot of these stories because we know that Dave Grohl likes to talk. He's a very talkative guy. He likes to tell a lot of stories. I have a feeling that maybe we've heard a lot of these stories already because lately I've gone down a little bit of a YouTube hole with Foo Fighters live shows and interviews. I've just been watching everything, so I'm sure I've heard a lot of these stories already. And I'm looking forward to this, but the clip that I heard of Dave reading one of these stories, and obviously I know he's an amazing guy. I worship Dave Grohl, but I felt like the clip was a little bit cheesy. I was listening to it. I'm like, I feel like Dave Grohl might be buying into his own hype a little bit at this point, because he knows that people really want to hear these stories and that he's got so many, but it's, a lot of stories about him meeting famous people and doing rock star things, which of course we want to hear about. But I felt like the clip was a little bit cheesy, Dave. I don't know how you feel about this new book, The Storyteller.
Yeah, it was for the new book. Like I love Dave Grohl too. I love the Foo Fighters.
We worship him, like literally.
Yeah, like they're he's definitely on our top list of bands and musicians we love to talk about. But I don't know. The book seems kind of in line with what he's been doing. You know what I mean? Like this is like, of course he's gonna have a book. The guy's got documentaries and
right,
and like he's making records at different spots around America. Like he's really embraced every avenue of being that level of a rock star. So it's only a matter of time. And I think he even did a book a couple years ago with his mom or something, or like
they did.
His mom did a book with him. I don't know, but
about
either way,
about rock star moms. Yeah.
Yeah, like they're dealing with they have great managers and stuff, so like they're gonna cash in on anything that's that they want to do. And Dave's getting older and probably gonna slow down touring. I probably a little bit in his
well, he was touring on a throne there for a while after he broke his leg, so I don't know if anything's really going to stop him now.
Maybe he'll just get and like hopefully I don't want him to stop, but he might be able to slow down if he's a New York Times best-selling author.
That's true.
So it's one of those things. It's the next evolution. I can't blame the guy. If I had a bunch of stories, I'd write a book too.
Right.
You know, I don't have a bunch of stories, and I still might write a book. So I totally get why he would do it. If you're smoking pot with Paul McCartney and
Right.
writing songs with John Lennon or Elton John,
Yeah.
you know, you're gonna write a book about it. That's the way it
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah. But for sure. And the thing with Dave Grohl is that he has this legacy. And we're going to be talking about the death of Kurt Cobain coming up a little bit later in the show because that anniversary just passed. But Dave Grohl comes from this rock legacy of moving through all these bands that have been hugely successful. And obviously he's earned that. But yeah, it just feels a little bit like he's buying into his own hype a little bit. I don't want to knock him because he can do whatever he wants. I'm still going to read the book. I may not listen to the audio version because that seems a little bit corny to me, but I'm still going to buy the book. I'm still going to read the book. It's just, I don't know. Sometimes it gets a little bit much. And with a lot of the projects that the Foo Fighters did within the last decade, which I still enjoyed, but when you think about Sonic Highways or Sound City, or even the Back and Forth documentary, which we went and saw together, Dave, 10 years ago this week. I don't know if you remember that. We went to go see the documentary in theaters together.
I do remember. That's crazy. It's been that long.
That was 10 years ago when Wasting Light came out. But since then, there's been a lot of storytelling involved in Foo Fighters music. Sonic Highways, the documentary, Sound City, everything like that. I tend to prefer when Foo Fighters just kind of go straight and write songs that aren't necessarily based around a concept. I think that's why I like albums like Wasting Light and Medicine at Midnight more than some of their other recent stuff. So I'm excited for it, but you know, whatever.
It is what it is. Those stories got to be told. You know, it's an interesting thing. Maybe they'll do something cool, like do like an animated thing where they like bring the stories to life and stuff. You know, like a lot of people have been doing that. So maybe there'll be some tasty little side bits that come out of this whole thing, you know, hopefully. But I'm down. I want to hear cool stories about David Bowie and stuff, you know.
Oh yeah, for sure. And he has some good ones about David Bowie. He tells one a lot about an email exchange that he had with David Bowie, where basically David Bowie told him to fuck off or something, you know.
Like I'm not born for this time or something.
Yeah, something like that. And that's the thing. I feel like I'm such a big Foo Fighters fan that I'm like, I've heard these stories before. It's old hat, you know.
Yeah, sure. But it's one of those things we've been, you know, we're 25 years deep in liking them, right? And being fans of Nirvana. So it's like we know it all. It's like, you know, Kurt and Courtney, the whole bit. We're like well versed in the world of Nirvana.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, let's get on to the next opening act topic. And this one is a little bit more complicated than Dave Grohl's new book. This one regarding Soundgarden versus Vicky Cornell. We don't really like to get into the nitty gritty of any of these legal battles or kind of tabloid controversial kind of things, but I think this is an interesting story. Obviously, it's been 4 years since the death of Chris Cornell and his former Soundgarden bandmates and his widow, Vicky Cornell. They've been in this heated legal battle for a couple of years now over the control of the band's recordings. That was a big one that they had. They were trying to get control of the band's master recordings, and now they're trying to get control of the band's social media accounts. And Soundgarden claimed they want control over this thing, and Vicky Cornell is claiming that they're defaming her. And I'm just trying to think of who's right in this situation. From my perspective, I understand that Vicky Cornell is Chris Cornell's widow, is his wife, is his biggest confidant, a huge part of his life, and the love of his life and everything like that. But I feel for the band as well, because these are the guys that made the music with Chris Cornell, that were in the room when they were making these songs and they were building the legacy of Soundgarden. So I still think it's kind of unfair that they've been shut out of the social media accounts and that they haven't been able to finish any of the demos that they made with Chris Cornell before he died. So I don't know. It's a complicated situation. I'm inclined to agree with the band on this one, but I don't know what you think, Dave.
I'm taking Vicky's side.
Oh,
give me my money. No, not at all. Not at all. It's one of those. It's a messy situation, like obviously, but as long as she's getting what would be going to him from his work, I think that as long as that's happening, I think that the band should be able to continue the project that he was such a part of, and the band should be deciding what kind of legacy and what kind of future is for the band. That's what a band is.
Right.
And no matter, even though Vicky was with Chris for some time, she was never in Soundgarden.
Right.
So you gotta, obviously it's a tragic loss and stuff, and the band's grieving as well as her and her family and her kids and stuff. But I feel a little bit that she's kind of grabbing, like and this probably comes back to the fact that Chris Cornell didn't have any money before he started doing Audio Slave, because he lost all of his money in his first divorce with Susan Silver,
Okay.
who was
Right.
like
Who was
who
his
was like a
manager
big,
at the time too,
yeah,
right?
she's like a huge manager. She did them, she did Alice in Chains and Screaming Trees, I think, or Sonic Youth, or one of the, I don't know, a bunch of people. She's a huge deal, and she made off very handsomely when they divorced, like whenever that happened. So when he got with Vicky, he didn't have much money, and he did the Audio Slave thing, and then it kind of picked up again, and then they redid Soundgarden. But so I feel a little bit like Vicky got a taste of the good life, and she's having a hard time just kind of stepping back and not getting the paychecks that were coming in when her husband was selling out amphitheaters and arenas anymore.
Right.
So it's sad, because obviously you want people to be taken care of, but I feel like, someone who's in a creative alliance with people, that it's sad that she's keeping these things ransom, pretty much, which is not cool. It's not a cool move. It doesn't look good on her. And as for her saying that the band is, it's slanderous or whatever, if this is a project for 30 plus years for these guys and their livelihood, so it's tragic, but like, these guys want to keep making music and making the most out of what was their project. And as long as Chris's portion is going to her, I really don't see what the problem is. Like, just keep the train rolling. Like, you're not doing anybody any favors by stopping the train and making everybody get off. It's not good.
Yeah. And obviously we don't know everything behind the scenes, but it just seems unnecessary to keep going through these legal battles. Again, we're looking at it from an outsider's perspective, but as Soundgarden fans, it would be nice to hear them complete the record that they did with Chris Cornell. I know it wasn't a full record. There might have been more demos involved in an actual finished product, but I think we would still like to hear that as Soundgarden fans. When they put out King Animal in 2012, when they got back together after however many years apart, that record was so good and it was so on the money. And when they released it, Soundgarden was back in such a huge way. And then Chris Cornell's solo work as well over the last decade or so was fantastic. And obviously his death was a huge blow and a huge tragedy in the rock world. And I think as fans, we just want to hear the music. We would hate to see that music unreleased and not put on the table, because we know that it's got to be good. And there's only so much Chris Cornell music in the vault, I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly. Right. On that tour and stuff, I got to go to like a sound check with Soundgarden on that tour. And it was interesting to me, because I always had this like notion of what Chris Cornell was, kind of this like quiet, like, leave me alone kind of rock star guy. And he legit came out for sound check and poured everyone that was hanging out glasses of wine.
Nice.
It was like, you know what I mean? It was like I have a different love for that band on different levels. Just a great band, and it would be a shame that he goes out that way, and then the band goes out that way too. So yeah, we'll see what happens though. It's a messy situation that I'm glad I'm not a part of.
Right. Yeah, we're looking at it as outsiders. I was listening to Live to Rise from the Avengers soundtrack. Do you remember that one? That was the one that came out before King Animal. And it just made me love Soundgarden even more, just to remember how much I love that tune and all their classics. And then King Animal, songs like By Crooked Steps, that was good. Been Away Too Long. That record is incredible. So I suppose if that is the last we're going to hear from Soundgarden, that's a good way for them to go out. So
Yeah. Hey man, they were putting out good stuff to the end. So that's always a good thing.
For
Always.
sure. Any of their music is a gift. And let's move on to the final opening act for this week. And I'd hate to move from tragedy to tragedy. I didn't really realize that when I was prepping the show today. But this week was the anniversary of the deaths of Kurt Cobain and Layne Staley. Kurt Cobain of Nirvana, Layne Staley of Alice in Chains. Kurt Cobain passed away on April the 5th in 1994. We lost Layne Staley in 2002. And their musical impact is still hugely felt in 2021. I was talking about, going down YouTube holes earlier, and I have been going down a Nirvana YouTube hole lately, watching live clips, watching interviews with Kurt, reading more about the recordings of their songs, watching stuff with Butch Vig, going through producing Nevermind, which it's just been a lot of fun. I didn't realize that we were coming up on the anniversary of Kurt's death. I just was kind of going into a little bit of a Nirvana phase that I hadn't been in for a while. And the music is still incredible. The songwriting is still incredible. Layne Staley, obviously, as well, a huge legacy. And it's kind of strange because, Kurt Cobain and Layne Staley died on the same day, that many years apart. But, then we lost Chris Cornell and Scott Weiland in the 2000s. And that felt kind of like a delayed thing. It felt like we were losing all of our 90s grunge rock heroes. When I think about them, I think maybe Eddie Vedder is the only one that is still with us. When you think about that initial group of huge Seattle grunge bands that came out in the early 90s. So it's just a crazy legacy that Kurt Cobain left and Layne Staley. I'm more of a Nirvana guy than an Alice in Chains guy. I love them both. But what are you thinking about on their anniversary of their deaths, Dave?
I kind of do the same thing as you, man. Like, every year at around this time, I end up in a Nirvana hole where I'm watching, them at a festival in Europe or, watching, it's just you end like, I don't know, it's weird. It's like it almost calls you every year. I always throw on Unplugged in New York in the springtime too, for some reason. It's like, it's just something about that album that it's like, I don't know, it's very bizarre. Yeah. So it's sad, man. The two troubled souls that had so much talent and obviously gone too soon, right? But I don't know, it's this is really like the saddest podcast we've done
yet. I know, I didn't realize that it would be like that, but
it's so morbid. It's like one after another.
Well, it was such a big thing that I was reading in in my Twitter feed yesterday. Everybody was talking about Kurt and was talking about Layne. With Nirvana, with Kurt, I was remembering when I was watching all these videos on YouTube of the concerts and stuff, is that we often think about he was a moody guy, he was a depressed guy, he had a lot of issues with drug abuse and that kind of thing as well. But his musicality, I'm trying to think about who he was as a musician and how he approached songwriting. Obviously, he had an incredible knack for melody. He was an amazing lyricist. But just trying to think about what inspired him and, that he was a guy who still liked to write songs and still make music, outside of this kind of huge persona that was thrust upon him early in those days. And I was watching a video of them playing Smells Like Teen Spirit for the first time live. And he was doing the melody of the song a little bit differently. There was different lyrics. And it made me think about, how we approach writing songs and how sometimes, that first time you play a song live is not the one that ends up being that huge hit, but that seed was still there. They played it. And, you got to wonder what it must have been like for somebody in the audience at that show to hear Smells Like Teen Spirit for the first time before anybody had ever heard it on the radio or became this massive hit. You're sitting at a club watching, I'm kind of a Nirvana fan. And they play this song that is literally going to change everything. And when you listen to it now, it doesn't seem as revolutionary as it did then, but it was this huge thing.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like you kind of forget. Like I saw it too. I was like, wow, it's almost 30 years since he's been gone. So it's so bizarre that like to think of how much has come out of that situation and like just how the terrain has changed so drastically in music since then. Like I always think like, what would they think about that? Like Layne's a little more recent, but like Kurt for sure, like being that type of an artist where you're, you're such an artist in every element, like art, lyrics, and playing, and just having that vision of what you want, not compromising it, which is
Right.
not something that happens a lot any time in music nowadays.
Yeah.
What they would think of how things are, what they would think of the Foo Fighters doing a Super Bowl.
Right.
Well, like where do you draw, like would they be happy and like congratulate them, or would it be like, that's Layne?
Yeah.
Where do they stand on that kind of thing, right? Because as society, we've just accepted that's what it is now,
Yeah.
because there aren't those anti people anymore. Like those people are so far gone that it's like, so yeah, it's interesting. It's really sad, but both of them put out some amazing art that will live on for at least the next 6 months. So it's great, and I'm happy that I got to experience those bands,
Yeah.
and without that, there'd be no Foo Fighters, and without Layne, there would be no new Alice in Chains. It's just
Yeah.
sad. It's always sad when you talk about guys that had so much potential to do. Like, where would we be with them with solo records? And like,
Yeah.
who knows? Who knows what would happen?
Yeah, I think Kurt would have slowed down a little bit because obviously fame and the huge impact of Nirvana weighed on him a lot. And I feel like he should have taken a break. Obviously they were on a huge upward swing when Nevermind came out, when Utero came out. So, but who knows? And I think they'd be complaining about Spotify just like the rest of us, and how there's no money involved. We would probably be reading that Kurt Cobain sold his entire song catalog for $300 million instead of the
right, like just getting out
diminishing
of the
returns.
So quick, what's your favorite Nirvana song?
I would say I'm going to go with In Bloom, because I was driving to work today with that song cranking, and it kicks so much ass. I love the vocals on that song. Dave Grohl does some really cool harmonies on it. So yeah, In Bloom. How about you?
Mine's like, I got a few. I like, I think it's a cover though. I'm really into. I was listening the other day to Love Buzz
Okay, yeah.
on Bleach. I think it's a cover though.
I think
So,
so,
but
yeah.
it's a cover, right? So if it wasn't Love Buzz, I don't know. Like Heart Shaped Box is always a good one.
Yep, I love that one.
You know,
Yep.
love it. They're just great.
Like Scentless Apprentice was a good one on in Utero. Serve the Servants is a good one. What about Alice in Chains?
I don't know.
Rooster. For classic
Okay.
Alice in Chains, I would go with Rooster, but I'm a huge fan of newer Alice in Chains.
And they're fantastic.
Yeah,
They're great band.
Trick My Brain. The
Oh,
Devil
great.
Put Dinosaurs Here. They
Yeah, great
still,
band.
they still really sound great. Now their new singer, he does sound like Layne, but he's fantastic.
Yeah, and Jerry Cantrell's awesome too. So
Of course, goes without saying. All right, well, let's move off the unintended depressing topics of our opening acts and get to this week's headliner. And I was saying earlier that this is a topic that I've wanted to talk about for a while. This is pretty much the reason why I wanted to start a podcast, was so we could rant about this topic in particular. And that is the notion that rock is dead and that there aren't any new bands anymore. And the reason we're talking about this is because I keep reading articles about musicians, namely Gene Simmons, Adam Levine, and now Chris Jericho, wrestler / Fozzy band member. And they're all like, there aren't any new bands anymore, man. Like, rock is dead. And the only person who was talking back against this was Black Sabbath's Tony Iommi, who says, yes, rock is alive. It's alive and well. And I wanted to talk about this rock is dead myth because it drives me crazy. And this whole thing about there's no bands out there, which is absolute bullshit, because we're in a band, Dave. We know how many people that are in bands all over the place. I'm just going to run down a bunch of bands. And obviously this comes with the kind of the asterisks that I agree that within the last 20 years that maybe there hasn't been those huge rock band names that become as big as the Beatles or the Stones or Led Zeppelin, but there are still tons of bands. So Biffy Clyro, Royal Blood, Haim, Best Coast, The Struts, Tame Impala, Wavves, Don Broco, Seaway, Nova Twins, Rival Sons, Arkells, Dinosaur Pileup, Arctic Monkeys, Band of Skulls, Greta Van Fleet, Blossoms, Bring Me the Horizon, Catfish and the Bottlemen, Coheed and Cambria, The Kooks, Danko Jones, Nothing But Thieves, The Pretty Reckless, Wolf Mother, Stand Atlantic. I'm just listing a couple of bands that I had off the top of my head. Obviously,
Sure.
there's many more out there, but
Sure.
I think the main thing to be taken away here is that there are so many great rock bands nowadays. I have a hard time when people say that there's no great bands out there, because we listen to them every day. We see them live. We follow them on social media. Again, the way that the music industry operates and has operated for the last 20 years is that a lot of these bands can't reach the level of those huge bands, even from the 90s, when you think about Pearl Jam or Soundgarden or Radiohead or Oasis or the Pumpkins or any of those big 90s bands. It's really hard for bands to make an impact nowadays in that same regard, because the industry just isn't able to support it like that. Pop music has always been, a huge dominant force in the music industry. So I don't really think it's pop music's fault. I just think you need to dig a little bit deeper to find great rock bands, because they're everywhere. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I agree, man. Like, I think that we talk about this all the time, that like some of our favorite bands of all time we've discovered in the last 10 to 8 years.
Yeah.
Like, we come across bands that we have 4 albums that we've never even heard, and then we catch it on like the 5th album, and we're like, oh, this band's fantastic. Oh, look at all these other amazing pieces of art they've put out over the years.
Right.
And yeah, I don't know. Like, of course these guys, of course Gene Simmons doesn't know
But
what's going on.
Yeah, but he's saying that good rock stopped in 1988. So that's completely false, because then we're discounting the 90s. If anything, the 90s was that last great decade of traditional radio rock bands. So you can't say that it died rock died a little bit in the 80s because of like really bad hair metal, but it came back in the 90s and continued from there.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think that you can't skip over the 90s and shit. But these guys, like I said, they're out of touch, man. These are dynasties. These are old men. These are old men. We're surprised. Like, sometimes I know that we've gone to see bands that are coming in from out of town in Toronto or different markets together.
Right.
And we're going a Tuesday night, and we're expecting it to be, 50 people with band girlfriends and a couple publicist people. And we show up and there's 350 kids at 7:30 on a Tuesday, ready to see the band that came from out of town. So to me, as someone who's been playing music for 20 years and putting on shows, that's very much alive. That's a very much, if you can start pulling out hundreds of kids when you draw into a city playing rock and roll. I think the problem lies, and where the confusion happens, is that rock has evolved so much. There's elements of rock in everything now. There's elements of rock in pop. There's elements of rock in hip hop. It's like, it's so saturated. Rock is so spread out now.
Yeah.
That if you're talking about grown men that dress up with paint on their face and walk around like they're from demons from outer space,
right?
Yeah, there's few and far in between. But that being said, there's bands like Slipknot. Like, you can find a couple bands that are 2-3 generations removed from these heavy metal icons. Now, are they respected and revered the same way as Black Sabbath or an Aerosmith and stuff? Not yet, but they will be. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, the people that were into it in high school were into Slipknot, Korn, and all these things. Like, those bands are going to have a resurgence when, we're in our mid 30s. So in our 40s and our 50s, if those guys are still doing shows at Darien Lake, people are going to go see it. You know what I mean? Like, you can't. So
you can't say that rock is dead for people that listen to it on a daily basis, right?
No, and I think there's a lot of people country, even, like, you think about how country has turned. Like, it went from being like, new country started out being kind of like pop, hip hop style country, like, kind of, and now it's evolved back into like guys that play electric guitars and have riffs, and like it's
Yeah.
so, like country now is even like a hybrid of rock. So it's like this. It's to say it's dead is a very is a very naive
Yeah.
and old time guy. I'm glad that Tony's standing up for it, though.
Yeah.
Like that's good. But he's like, these guys are idiots. They don't know what they're talking
Yeah.
about.
And there aren't those huge monolithic bands, because I don't really think the industry can support those, those huge bands anymore. Back then it was something different, right? And now rock music is competing with so many other things all the time, that it's tough to, get those huge names like there used to be. But that doesn't mean there's any shortage of good music.
Absolutely, yeah. It's very interesting. Like to just write off a whole genre is kind of crazy, especially since everything is like kind of based around it. I think like you can't get away from it in every aspect of every genre. So, and even like technique, like even production technique now, like
Mhm.
like there's lots of artists that like you look at hip hop guys like Machine Gun Kelly,
Right.
who is now he's putting out punk records. So
Mhm.
like and punk's a part of rock. Like it's all this like it all ties in, and it's a big mishmash of tree roots when you get that deep into it. So
Yeah.
I don't know, man. And if you look at it that way, like if you count, I know people might get mad at this, but if you count one of like a Kelly Clarkson song as a rock song, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, of
I
course.
know it's a pop song, but like it's a
Yeah.
pop rock song when there's dirty guitars and big drums and all that stuff.
Mm.
So it's not my taste, but if you were to count those, it's doing good. Like Pink does well with doing
Right.
rock stuff. There's
Yep.
lots of like pop people that double down on the rock vibe. Like Machine Gun Kelly just put out a punk record, Travis
It's a good
Barker.
record too. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
so it's
solid
like
record.
there's just different levels of the like rock is so spread out. It's so and it isn't the Sabbath. There's not a lot of bands that look like Sabbath, and there's not a lot
Right.
of and we're
Well,
pretty critical of bands
there
that come
is.
out then too. So
But we talk about, I listed those bands earlier. A band like the Struts has an old school kind of feel to them, right? Or a band like Rival Sons, they still have
sure,
that classic rock feel to them. And there you go. Even if you say rock is dead or it doesn't have a classic rock sound, there are bands that still cater to,
sure,
Greta Van Fleet. They still cater to classic rock fans, because that's still part of the equation. It just doesn't
sure.
make up the whole thing. And it might depend on where you get your music as well, because when I was working in radio, it was a lot of perpetuating those huge rock myths like AC/DC and Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath,
Yeah,
which, of course, these are the huge monoliths of rock. But even 90s rock now is classic rock. It's 2021.
sure.
So to still be clinging to those old notions of what rock music is, or who should play rock music, or how it should be played, it doesn't feel right to me. And if you're listening to the radio, you're still getting that kind of one-way street of rock music. So if you really want to discover more music, you have to get outside of that ecosphere. You have to stop listening to the radio. That's basically what I'm saying. And just follow your heart to great
Yeah,
music, because it's everywhere. And there are plenty of bands out there, not necessarily even the big bands that we're talking about, but independent bands
sure.
everywhere.
Yeah,
We know so
everywhere.
many bands everywhere that
Yeah.
would love your fandom. So if you're looking for rock, if you're one of those people who says rock is dead and that there are no bands out there, look a little bit deeper, because they're everywhere and they would appreciate your support.
Sure. Like, and there's lots of bands that have had like success in the last little while that are like essentially rock bands that people have been behind and have been
Yeah.
going to flock to, and like Portugal the Man, or
Yeah.
like Four Kids. There's all these levels of bands that are out there where like albums and albums of material of really good songs
Yeah.
that maybe didn't get the love in your country or your area, and now they're just out. They're 10 years old now, but they're solid songs, solid songwriting, great live bands, And I think you just got to dig deep. You know, it's great with streaming platforms is like the suggested or recommended feature.
Right.
You know, it's easier to fall into like a tunnel that you know and that you're kind of into. So, and I know we both like that feature too because we both found bands and sent each other text messages like, "Oh
Yeah.
my god, I just found this band."
Yeah. And I will occasionally listen to bands where I'm like, no, that is definitely not my thing. But then through discovery, you discover a lot of stuff. Like Don Broco just popped up
Sure.
in my feed one day. And now they're one of my favorite bands. Same with Biffy, same with a lot of bands. You see them pop up and you take a chance. You click and you go down the rabbit hole.
Then you're 25 songs in and you haven't skipped one.
Exactly.
And it's like, there you go. You've met your.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think we can agree that rock is not dead. There are plenty of great bands out there, and that Gene Simmons, Adam Levine, and Chris Jericho. So disappointing for Chris Jericho. Not that I have some great respect for Chris Jericho, but so disappointing that he would say that. He's basically throwing his own band under the bus.
Listen, Le Champion, Chris Jericho, needs to shut his mouth. Okay. No, I love Chris Jericho.
Is that a challenge? Are you going to take him on in the ring?
I'll cut a promo right now, Nick. Don't you get me started.
That'll be the headline of this video. Forget everything else.
No, Chris Jericho, he's one of those people though. Like he's had success in everything he does. So,
right.
I'm not surprised that 50-year-old pro wrestler Chris Jericho, who plays in a hard rock 50-year-old band, doesn't know what's up and coming. Like I'm not surprised. Like just like Gene Simmons, like they're just a little bit too far out to know.
What about Adam Levine though? He's young. He's hip.
Oh, don't get me started on Adam.
He takes his shirt off. It looks good. That makes him an expert, right?
He's a studly man. I'll give him that. He's a studly man.
Yeah.
But everyone knows that his daddy got him where he is. I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna Keenan Thompson it. I'm gonna say it.
Putting it out there. Yeah. Can't be held accountable for anything.
So, and I don't even mind Maroon 5, right? That's Maroon 5, right?
I like early Maroon 5, the first record, Harder to Breathe.
Sure.
That's a solid track.
Yeah, there is some stuff that rocks in Maroon 5. Not all of it, but there is some stuff that rocks.
You really want to say that on the podcast that Maroon 5 rocks?
There's a great cover of 9 Inch Nails. They do a great cover of 9 Inch Nails that rocked.
Which one?
And
which song? Closer?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's like stripped down. It's really cool.
It's not creepy.
I recommend that. That's going to be my first recommendation at the end of the show.
Are all the F-bombs in there?
All of it. It's filled.
Okay, good. I would feel like they would censor that because we can't say the F word.
It was like I think it was at like a radio station thing too, but it wasn't on air. It was like they played it as like okay, this is our single, and then this is like our cover. But the cover's amazing, and I have it on playlists forever because it's like people are always like, who's this?
Who is it?
And it's like, oh, this is Maroon 5. And they're like,
what?
So
that's them? Yeah.
And the guy's a stud. No one's gonna deny that guy's a stud. Come on.
Well, yeah, he's a good-looking guy, but he's dumb. He's dumb.
Dummy.
For thinking that there are no bands. He's in a band. Doesn't you notice that there's other people around him playing? The people playing instruments around you, Adam Levine, that's called a band.
Yeah, put your shirt on. Put your shirt on, Adam.
Put your damn shirt on. Shut up. Anyway.
Nobody wants to see your defined chest and your perfect stomach and your perfect tattoos. No one wants that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some do. Maybe sometime, but not right now. Anyway.
I'll tell you what doesn't rock. That.
Okay. Well, that is the end of that subject. Rock is not dead. Plenty of good bands out there. Go listen to them. That is the headliner topic for this week. We're going to wrap things up with our tracks of the week. Dave, do you want to go first for the tracks of the week? What have you been listening to?
Okay, so I've been over the quarantine. I've been watching a lot of what Danko Jones has been up to.
He's the man.
I know you love Danko Jones, and we've been fans of Danko Jones forever. And they have a new record coming out called Power Trio. I'm not sure if it's out yet, but it's coming out.
It comes out in August.
From that, is it August? The first single from that is I Want Out. So I think everybody should go check out I Want Out. It's very Danko. It hits all those elements if you're into You know, you know what I love about Danko? I feel like they're kind of my Thin Lizzy.
Yeah.
You know, they're like my Thin Lizzy. Like I turn to them when I want a Thin Lizzy mood. The you know, writing songs that are storytelling songs about girls and broken hearts and you know, hanging with the boys and stuff. I think it's awesome. I've always liked Danko Jones. And
we're talking about Foo Fighters, right? Telling stories. Danko Jones tells a lot of stories on his Instagram. He's definitely worth a follow.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's you know, he's been standing up for all the right things over the last months too.
Good dude.
And,
yeah.
You know, he's been putting a lot of people, a lot of flat earthers and anti-vaxxers and stuff in their place, and he's really you know, he's really standing up for what's right in his community and doing what's good. So go check that out. Yeah, my song is Danko Jones. The song's called I Want Out. Go check it out.
Right on. Love Danko Jones. Yeah, that new record Power Trio comes out in August. So definitely we'll be talking about that as we get closer to it. My track, I always cheat. We should change it to tracks of the week so we can cheat more often. But we were talking about this the other day. Mammoth WVH, Wolfgang Van Halen, You're to Blame. Which is awesome. It's a great track. I didn't know that Wolfgang Van Halen, I know he played bass in Van Halen, but I wasn't aware how talented this guy was. I sent you that video the other day. He was doing a video for another song where he kind of played all different versions of himself jamming out in the jam room, which was hilarious. But who knew this guy was so good?
Yeah, man. I guess, you know, he's got a good lineage behind him, and it's I actually fell into it a couple months ago. I think he did an interview with Bill Burr,
right?
Bill Burr's podcast, and yeah, he's, you know, he sounds like a smart kid, and he definitely has the background behind him to, you know, when you're playing with Van Halen at 16 or 17 or whatever it was. It's awesome, man. And it's surprising, but it's not at the same time. Like when you hear it, it's just so what you would expect from that situation. But in the best way possible. Like there's no real, like I've listened to a bunch of the songs over the last little bit, and it's awesome. It's a super cool project, super rocky. It's a rock and roll band, very much alive and living.
Yeah, so, exactly. We're talking about bands, you know.
You know, and it's, you know, it's not him doing finger taps like his dad. It's not him trying to be like
it's very modern rock.
Even it's modern rock, man. He could easily be on a bill with, you know, Royal Blood or any band like that, any big rock riff band that and it's awesome. It's awesome. Like thumbs up. I agree. It's a great fucking song.
Yeah, the latest one from Wolfgang Van Halen. I think that comes out, the record comes out, I want to say May or June, but looking forward to that one. And then my other track of the week was one of my favorite bands from California, from Wavves, their new song, Sinking Feeling. It's been a couple of years since they put out a new track. Their last record was You're Welcome in 2017. But Nathan Williams of Wavves, they're my favorite California stoner rock band. And this song's a little bit more chill than we're used to from Wavves, but it's fantastic. It's a good stoner song. So that is one of my tracks of the week as well. Wavves, Sinking Feeling. Excited. I don't know if this is going to be from a new record, but for an individual track, I dug it.
Oh, cool. I'll check it out. I don't know if I know that one.
Yeah, check it out, Dave. And that is the end of our Rock Squad podcast.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it for this week. And let's thank everybody for watching and listening. Yeah, we're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. There is an audio version of the podcast that is being distributed as we speak. We are on Spotify right now. We're on Google Podcasts. I think Apple Podcasts is coming up soon. Still waiting for that one to go through. So, but there are many ways for everybody to enjoy the podcast, whether that be here on YouTube and on the audio version as well. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We're at Rock Squad Pod. And where can the folks follow you, Dave?
I'm Red Coast Records on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. You can follow me on all of those. Also, remember to go down and like this video if you've hung out with us all night, and subscribe to our channel so that you're notified when we have more videos. There's always stuff brewing. Make sure you write a review. Happy to hear from you. Hey, Nick.
Yeah.
Rock on, man.
rock on, Dave. You can follow me at the Walking Nick. And that'll be it for this week's show. I want to thank everybody for watching, and make sure to check out our band. We're called Fools Union. You can check us out on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, foolsunion.com. Check it out. We'll see you guys later. See ya.